It's one of us, Adnan.
He vetoes the opening, but he's got a really strong case. Hall of Fame is right around the corner, Costi, and you're making a case for a guy who is a tremendous second baseman, Jeff Kent. What do you got?
I'll lay out the particulars of the case here. I'll let you guys decide which side of the line he falls on. But Jeff Kent, obviously, he's an offensive player. The case is mostly offense, and in particular that he has the most home runs by a second baseman ever. You take a look at what he averaged during his peak in terms of from 1997 to 2005, 28 homers, 110 RBIs per season, the best offensive second baseman of his generation, a 132 OPS plus in that stretch. And you see on the bottom an MVP with the Giants in 2000. Now you take a look at how he compares to some of the other contemporaries of his time and how they debuted on the ballot. He comes up pretty far short of how these guys debuted in their first year on the BBWA Hall of Fame ballot, just 15%. He's moved that up closer to about a third. This is his last year of eligibility, and you see that second line there. The best offensive player, perhaps, of the group, but his defense left something to be desired, at least in terms of the statistics, in terms of the total package. Next one here, guys, offensive WAR among all players. Obviously, he stands out among second basemen, but the thing that I think holds some people up with Kent, you compare him to all players and you consider that he wasn't really a glove guy at second. He really only had a couple seasons where he stood out among the whole player pool in terms of what he was doing offensively. The MVP season you see there, and then a couple seasons later in 2002 when he was playing with the peak Bonds. So what does that mean, guys? Well, you take the position out of it. Here's how he compares to some other guys who aren't in the Hall of Fame, or in Roland's case, at least aren't yet. Basically the same type of offensive profile as a Scott Rolen, except Rolen has all the gold gloves, and Kent was, you know, at best probably a passable defender at second base. The next one, H, I think you'll find this interesting. How about Torrey Hunter at another position? He barely stayed on the ballot last year at 5.3%, and the career totals are basically the same among these two players. So great offensive career for Kent, maybe left something to be desired with the glove. The statistics bear that out. But Adnan, Matty V might not be here with this soundboard, but I actually brought my own sound today. We have an expert in the building on Jeff Kent. Take a listen.
Kent's a Hall of Fame. He won an MVP. Anybody who tells you about his defensive metrics doesn't know anything about baseball.
Look.
I saw Kent play every game.
Every game, Adnan. That's a very, very tough position to argue against, but I'll give you the floor to try to do it. Where do you come down on Jeff Kent?
Let me tell you something right now, okay? I'm not biased. People, I love the Giants, but Hall of Famer. Hall of Famer. That's ridiculous. You saw every single game. I love Doggy, but I think Keith laid it out perfectly. He's a great offensive player. It was the offensive Hall of Fame he's in. And he was part of an era in which there was a lot of great offensive players. Maybe he loses a little bit of shine there because he's playing with Bonds, and Bonds' numbers were so a big difference. But I think
you're saying he's in?
I don't think he is.
Oh, you don't think so?
Because I don't think the total resume stacks up. I thought he was a great offensive player. No question.
I got him in no problem.
Really?
Yes.
Defense, Keith was being generous. He said passable. He was average at best.
Okay, so what I find interesting, how many ground balls is he going to get in the game? Jeff Kent didn't
10
kill
to 12.
You. Not that many. You're going to get 4. I mean, he didn't kill you. And here's the other thing I would do. I thought it was interesting how Keith took out, the position and put him with different people.
Yeah.
Let's say he was DH in that time. The numbers he put up as a DH would have warranted him being one of the best players in his time. Now you put a glove on him and put him at second. He could turn a pivot. He caught the ground ball. He moved from third to second. I remember when he was with the Mets and he's riding the bike, and he was actually with Toronto, and we're talking, and he's moving to second base.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, you're going to be a force, because nobody had that kind of power at second base. I mean, you're looking at Ryan Sandberg, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And that was really it. So to me, it's not his fault he ended up playing second and hitting 300 and something homers. He's in the Hall of Fame. That's just how I look at it. I don't know. Keith, you get the final say. What do you think?
He's going to say no.
I think he probably comes up just a little bit short. But when we play the small hall, big hall game, maybe in theory I'd like it to be a small hall, but it's trending towards a big hall. So I really don't have any problem if he gets in. We can play that game all year long. Is he better than whatever the low man threshold is? I think he probably is. But I can understand why people are on the fence.
I think if he goes to the committee, a committee's putting him in.
You think fellow players will respect him more than the writers?
Yep.
Yep, I'd agree with that.
I like Keith's numbers, too, how low his percentage was, especially as the first year compared to those other guys. Because, as you said, if you said Sandberg, Alomar, those other names, Alomar, obviously, incredible defensively. But you mentioned Rhino's offense, different era, early 80s, etc. But
I mean, if we're
guys
talking about
who were known as good hitters at second base, he's in that class, and those numbers aren't even close.
we're judging Jeff Kent on defense, where we just had a generation guys playing the shift. What are we gonna do
Yeah, that's
when these guys come eligible for the ballot when they're catching balls in deep right field?
yeah.
Come on. So I just think it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. He's a Hall of Famer for me. He's a Hall of Famer for Dog. I just think.
If you're looking at his defense, you don't know anything about baseball.
Yeah.
Get off the show.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Hall of Fame announcement next week, Tuesday, January 24th. Our coverage begins at 4 o'clock Eastern right here on MLB Network. Live announcement at 6 Eastern. Right now, you look at the numbers. Could be rolling. Obviously, Crime Dog's getting in, but it's going to be intriguing these next few days. So make sure you catch the announcement. Brian Kenny, Tom Verducci, and the rest of the outstanding crew. All right, great job there by Keith. When we come back here on Hot Stove, we'll turn our attention in a different direction.
To the Miami Marlins. And the Marlins have been really aggressive in looking for bats all offseason long. They are certainly, to your point earlier, not done with their offseason shopping. They want to find a way to get one more bat, and who better to go to than someone who's been perpetually in the batting champion conversation in Luis Arraez, who can play some second, some first, gives you a really reliable, great contact, bat-to-ball performance on the left-hand side of the batter's box. And for the Twins, this is where perhaps getting Carlos Correa in allows you to have a bit more flexibility with your infield group and to bring in more reliability on the pitching side. Now, Pablo Lopez is someone who's been talked about a lot as being a trade candidate with the Marlins. They added Johnny Cueto in recent weeks to really supplement their starting rotation to where they now have tradable depth. And Pablo Lopez was a legitimate candidate to be traded as far back as the trade deadline in 2022. Our Joel Sherman's reported a lot about how the Yankees thought they were on the move there to potentially bring in Pablo Lopez at the trade deadline. That's why they made the Montgomery trade. But I think one name that's really interesting, and he's probably not going to the Twins in this deal if it ends up happening, but that's Edward Cabrera, someone who I think is underrated around the industry for just how talented he is, what he showed in 2022. Cabrera has an electrifying arm. And so if we see Lopez move on to the Twin Cities, and the Twins believe they're going to get a better performance, certainly Chris Paddock, the former Marlin, coming back from Tommy John surgery, they believe he's going to be a huge part of their rotation. Tyler Mahle as well, although Mally's getting closer to free agency. This is a trade that makes a lot of sense on both sides of the equation. My understanding is it's still being talked about, but we're not yet at a stage, Adnan and Harold, where anything is imminent right now with the trade between Miami and Minnesota.
Good stuff, JP. We'll check back to you later. I don't know if you saw off the top, though, but Harold had a video there. Buck Showalter with his grandson on the trampoline. You a big trampoline guy? You and the girls get after it, jumping up and down there in the backyard?
I'm not a big trampoline guy. I will say this. This is what happens when you are married to a doctor. Whenever there's word of a trampoline, Alexis just shakes her head and says,
Right.
"No, John,
That
can't do it." But I'll tell you this.
Yeah.
Now, Adnan, you're gonna love this, my friend. You will appreciate this.
Oh, yeah,
this is
Nordiques.
one of my Christmas gifts of the year.
Yeah.
When you can rock Les Nordiques du Québec, the toque of the Quebec Nordiques. That is style, my friend. So I wanted to make sure I'm working on Je travaille un peu de mon français. I'm trying to work on my French, and so when I have the Nordiques logo literally pressed upon my head, I feel just a bit better in my French speaking.
Oh my
ability.
God!
I love it. I love it. It looks good.
The rating's skyrocketing in French Canada right now.
Très bon.
You look like Peter
Merci beaucoup.
Stastny.
À la
I love
prochaine.
it. Look how they say. Awesome stuff, JP. Thank you.
That's cool. Hey, that's pretty amazing. He threw me with the hat. I was going to go into talking about the
You had a
Marlins.
baseball point to make, and then you got thrown up. Go ahead.
Well, everybody keeps talking about Lopez being traded from the Marlins. This has been out there for quite a while. And I'm sitting here going, there's only one pitcher I want from the Marlins, and that's Sandy. I mean, I'm sorry. The guy's locked up for 5 years at $55 million.
Incredible contract.
He's the best pitcher in baseball, and he's going to bring me back everything I need and then some.